So as you know, Corleone Gun Dogs puts out some videos on YouTube, but we train people in Patreon. You have to come over to Patreon if you really want to see good quality training, real life training with your dog. Now this interview that we had here was Corleone Talk. You can only see these interviews if you come over to Corleone Talk, and the only way you can get over to Corleone Talk is if you're on Patreon. Now, why have I put this controversial comment up? It's because the internet is full of craziness. I'm trying to keep it polite. Craziness. And yet there's people out there who are inspirations and mavericks of the dog training world. This is one of them. Gary Wilks. World Class Training and Behavior Services. He has done more for the dog world than people can imagine. He's done it, been there and seen it. Feel free to check him out on clickandtreat.com. Gary is a wealth of knowledge. He puts out much content that will open your mind and show you the truth in the dog training world. We need more people like Gary. If we had more people like Gary, we wouldn't be in this situation we are in the dog training world. I promote trainers that do it the way it should be done. Trainers that get results and say it in an honest manner.
However, the single most important skill that you must have before you even think of being a trainer is rooted in the question of how do you stop a single behavior now? And preferably add to that and leave a lasting inhibition so that it doesn't come back. Because when you have a system like the all positive people that requires constant maintenance and bribery, that is inevitably a fail. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And the behavior you don't like is not inhibited, which means it can come back at any time, and it's dependent upon whether or not a trigger is hit. And dogs have plenty of triggers, and they might change from day to day. One day the dog doesn't care that there's a big German Shepherd 4 feet from it, and the next day, for whatever reason, it objects. That's what we do. I mean, I don't always flash and get sort of bridled by everybody always in every circumstance. But there are times where someone might say or do something that I object to, and I have every right to object to it. Well, dogs are the same way. And unfortunately, they don't talk. They're not people. We can't really communicate with them as much as people throw that word around. It's not real communication because you can't know what they're thinking. It's impossible. So all the pet psychics out there and people, they can read dogs. Boy, the famous refutation of that is this phrase. That he's never done that before. And it's often true. And if the dog has never done it before, what is there to read? The only thing you can read is potential. So if you have a Cane Corso who's 14 months old and he's the sweetest dog in the world, and one day he kills a little white poodle, my way of thinking is kind of like, oh, it took him that long? But because there were no blocks in place in advance, the owner couldn't react in real time, and they didn't inhibit the behavior in the first place, so that when it all comes down and explodes, they're screwed.
Yeah.
There's nothing they can do about it. I think of teaching the dog about punishment as your parachute. It means that you can stop an emergent incident before it gets to the point of veterinary care. And if you haven't done that, you haven't done right by your dog. I mean, just that bottom line. Or you can't allow them to be around other dogs and people. I just had a pool care guy here to fix the pump on my pool, because everybody in Arizona has a pool. So I have a 9.5-month-old cattle dog. He's just starting to wake up his territoriality and his edginess when he sees somebody outside. So I was in a hurry. I just kept him in his crate. No big deal. But that's something I'm going to work on so that if a gardener or a pool guy comes in my backyard and accidentally my dog's out there, I'm not going to have a lawsuit and blood on the ground.
Yeah.
So that's my obligation up front because I own a dog. Nobody's going to get hurt by him. No dog is going to get hurt by him. And to do that, you have to select the procedures likely to inhibit behaviors, like rushing toward the front door or jumping on guests. And maybe you don't do it perfectly, but you at least get the foundational associations made so that if an emergency happened, you could handle it. And so what they do is they shove their hand down there and they grab the dog by the neck, and then they get wounds on the wrist. When I worked as a dog catcher, we had a standard joke when somebody was on the phone talking about something. And if the person on the phone on our end did this, it meant they were talking to somebody who tried to break up a dog fight and got their wrist bitten.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like striking a match and then having the natural gas blow in your home, of course. Well, most people, first off, don't know how to break up a dog fight, but they put their dog in jeopardy by having no other infrastructure with which they could control the behavior.
Spot on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what, Gary? That's exactly. I haven't got a teenage crush on you. I'm 59 years old. I've been doing this for 35 years. You're the only man out there who says it the way it is, and I salute you for it, sir. Because you've been there, you've tried the positive movement. Throwing food at a dog in that situation does not resolve the situation, does it?
Well, I had a grand gift given to me. When I was 24, I was hired to manage a small animal shelter. So for a total of 8 years of my life, I worked in every aspect of that job, including dog catcher, which is not an easy task. And it puts you in confrontation with dogs that don't like you, want to hurt you, and you didn't do anything. I didn't trigger it. I didn't do anything. I was bitten once in this entire career by a dog that was allowed out of a crate in a back room before I was ready. So I had a Wheaton Terrier attached right here before I knew anything. And guess what? In my world, Wheatons have an edgy reputation. They're terriers. I mean, they're territorial. They defend their owners. They have teeth. By God, they have teeth. And that's a pretty good record. It's not perfect, but it's close. But I knew a long time ago that dogs can hurt you and will hurt you if you do things that are wrong. So before I was ever a trainer, I already had that knowledge and had handled thousands of dogs safely, effectively. That told me what was likely to harm a dog, because I never harmed a dog, even though I handled them very strongly.
Yeah, firmly. Yeah.
I mean, I did what was necessary to get the job done.
Yeah.
Most of these all positive people are the kind that would pick up a tortoise and put it in their car to drive it down to the river.
Yeah.
Rather than letting it stay in the roadway. Now, I've actually done things like that. I used to live on a canal, a big canal, and I was known as the rescuer. I rescued doves and bunnies and dogs and took one home for 17 years. So I've done all that stuff. Why they don't understand that a person can have the full spectrum of understanding.
Exactly.
I can be incredibly forceful with punishment because I know how to do it safely.
Yeah.
And if it's a serious behavior, a potentially lethal behavior, why would I pussyfoot around with treats?
Exactly.
Because that can't inhibit anything. Why would you do that? And the answer is they're not fully functioning rational people.
Yeah. And that is so brilliant about what you say, Gary. And you put your head above the parapet and you do get shot at. But the people in the know understand that you are a maverick in your own era of dog training.
Well, I think that's because culture has changed over the last 50 years. In part thanks to behavioral scientists who are liars and poltroons and fools and frauds, because they don't talk realistically about behavior, and a real scientist is there to reveal nature, not give you a narrative that doesn't work. And what they've done consistently for 70 years is give a narrative that doesn't work. And so I see them handle some of the dogs I handle and just say, why don't you prove it? And then I think, which is in the UK as well as the US, every place there are teenage boys, there are bullies.
Yeah.
Throughout history, across every continent, and the smartest of smart behavior analysts and behavioral scientists can't stop a single one of them. So that shows you what they can do, which is nothing of importance. And I think as a culture, we need to take some of this stuff back and start calling people out for spreading nonsensical, dangerous ideologies that harm people, harm dogs. It's just nuts. For instance, if a dog bites someone, the sympathy's for the dog.
Mm.
We can't stress the dog.
Mm.
We can't scare the dog, even though the dog scares everybody that walks by the person's house.
Yeah.
So the dog they terrify the world, and we aren't allowed to make them feel bad at all because that might hurt their feelings. And oh my God, that might traumatize them. What, a 95-pound German Shepherd, you're going to traumatize it by applying punishment to wanton aggression?
Mm.
Not if you do it my way.
Yeah.
So instead of looking for the solution, which was how to use punishment effectively, safely, they just said, we can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, there's Alice went down the rabbit hole. And for the rest of that time she was there, nothing made any sense. Well, they want us to go down the rabbit hole when there are serious consequences if we do. And I choose not to do that. And, everybody who is open about this struggles with the fact that the only person you can punish in our current modern Western culture is someone who says that punishment can be done effectively, safely. Oh, and by the way, it's necessary.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm having so much shit at the moment, Gary. I've got a police investigation for harassment to a woman who's given me grief for 8 years. I've told her to go away and fuck off and leave me alone, and she won't never hear from me again. But while she slags me off and says I'm abusive to dogs because I use punishment, I have every right to defend my good name and my business. And I will not be dominated by the police, by her, or anybody out there, because I believe that everything I do, I stand by. Everything I put on the internet, I stand by. Everything I say, I stand by. And they're saying this is harassment to her. No, it's harassment to my business, my trade. She is not a dog trainer. She is a fluffy treat throwing trainer that bribes dogs for dancing dogs, and she has never been a gun dog trainer. She goes to all the famous dog trainers in the UK who don't tell her the truth because they're shit scared of the consequences, because she goes after you if you use discipline. She is an internet troll, and we need to stand up to them.
Here's the great irony. Here's the great irony. A person who hates punishment uses it as a first resort toward anyone that doesn't agree with her.
Yeah.
This is a nasty person. Now, the Irish used to have a solution to that. They still do. They just don't use it much. It's called a shillelagh.
Clunk.
And the IRA, oh yeah, and the IRA had a practice of shooting people in the knees.
In the kneecaps, yeah, exactly.
Not killing them, just taking out their knees. And in this case, you'd have to do fingers.
But the thing is,
on the internet, they can't make phone calls.
The thing is, Gary, if I went down that road and said that, they'd take my guns off me, because in this country, you're fucked. You know, if you say one thing out of place as a gun dog owner and a gun owner, you are screwed, because you have to act within the law. But the law doesn't even know what the rules are, because harassment means that one person is going after one person and the other person wants to be left alone. If two people are bitching on the internet with each other, that's not harassment.
No, it's just futile.
It's a joke. But I won't give in, Gary.
It's the same thing here, and it's a result of a change in Western civilization over the last 50 years.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is that the rest of the world doesn't believe any of that.
Yeah.
And so they will eventually... Well, you're looking at the dissipation and the atrophying of morals and standards, where rational decisions like, is this harassment or not, or who's harassing who, you can't make those determinations. And I'll tell you, this is actually a wise thought. You cannot make a value judgment of any kind unless you make a comparison between two things.
Yeah.
This is immoral because it isn't this. And they never do that. They claim that you're immoral because you used punishment on a dog. Compared to what?
Mm.
A lab that just goes flying across the moors and you never see it again?
Yeah.
And then it has a gene splice and it becomes the Hound of the Baskervilles? I don't know. It's all fantasy, so you might as well. I like Sherlock Holmes, so you might as well go that far.
Yeah, exactly.
Christopher, I love talking to you. What the hell time is it there? 8 o'clock at night?
It's 8:20, Gary.
Oh my gosh. Well, to me, it's just barely noon. So
Yep.
I'm going to bid you adieu.
You're a star.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I love it.
Take it easy. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I will.